Try and rid ourselves of this horrendous form of international terrorism.
Now, Tuesday's attack, perhaps predictably, being unanimously condemned among U.S. allies. Brent Sadler reports, though, that the U.S. is also receiving sympathy and support for some unexpected quarters.
In a city once known as the terror capital of the world, an English headline in an Arabic newspaper sums up shock and horror. Lebanon is still home to the Iranian-backed Hezbollah organization, long classified by the United States as a terrorist group, although Lebanon itself is not. Hezbollah's spiritual mentor, Mohammed Hussein Fadlallah, said that while they opposed hostile U.S. policy towards Arabs and Islamic people, nothing justifies what happened in America. In Syria, also on Washington's list of states sponsoring terrorism, President Bashar al-Assad sent a personal message of sympathy to President Bush, calling for international cooperation to combat terrorism in all its forms. Among the Lebanese, many tens of thousands of whom are dual nationality U.S. citizens, there's outrage, combined with official support for any U.S. action to combat terrorism.
We have seen children, women, men running on the street, terrified. We cannot accept that. Nobody can accept that. It is against our religion. It is against our all principles we stand for.
But in several of Lebanon's squalid Palestinian refugee camps, some reaction jarred with the prevailing sense of sorrow. We're against international terrorism, says this Palestinian, but America should bear responsibility because it's feeding international terrorism by using its warplanes to strike civilians in Iraq and other places in the world. The Palestinian leadership, struggling to overcome images like these, denounced what it called the isolated actions of a few.
I don't think it should be, for any reason, be used as a representation of how the Palestinians very seriously feel in horror and in sorrow about what happened. These are very isolated incidents, and I think they should really be ignored.
Both Syria and Lebanon say they're willing to cooperate with US-led efforts to combat international terrorism. But any mutual agreement on what specifically constitutes terrorism, especially in the now highly sensitized Middle East, may be easier said than done. Brent Sadler, CNN, Beirut.
Well, European Union and NATO members also harshly condemned the attacks, and Wednesday NATO also invoked its mutual defense clause for the first time in alliance history. A NATO statement said, quote, each ally will assist the party that has been attacked by taking such action as it deems necessary. Accordingly, the United States, NATO allies stand ready to provide the assistance that may be required as a consequence of these acts of barbarism. The European Union followed NATO's lead and held a minute of silence to memorialize the victims. It also offered to help with search and rescue efforts, and it declared a Europe-wide day of mourning.
When the freedom of Berlin was at stake, John F. Kennedy said, you know the famous sentence, Ich bin ein Berliner. That was the expression of an incredible solidarity. Today, I think we have reason, especially as Germans, to return this show of solidarity. We stand in solidarity with the American people.
There is still a sense in the United States that the country is not going to get back to normal, perhaps not ever. Bruce Morton now has the story of a country struggling to do that, to get back to normal.
The House will be in order.
Congress went back to work.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
People went to church trying to make sense of it all. God made us free, the homily said, to do good or evil. And people went back to work. In New York, exhausted rescue workers caught their breath. Signs said pray, and surely many did. And some just cried. Major League Baseball canceled all its games for the second straight day. New York's tunnels were closed. Airports looked ghostly. This was Dallas-Fort Worth. The limited flights for stranded people will resume. An odd day for those who work in airports.
I've been here for almost 6 months, and I've never, ever, it's almost peaceful.
In Chicago at the Sears Tower, America's tallest building, it was business as usual. But some who work in it are worried.
And this is the tallest building I ever worked in. Normally the buildings it would go like 21 or maybe 31, but this is the tallest, and I'm terrified.
Newspaper headlines offered a sample of reaction to the terror, pretty straightforward mostly. The San Francisco Examiner was just plain angry. And on talk radio, this is San Francisco's KGO, people, this man said he was an airline pilot, talked.
What more do you need? Do we need to have the Capitol taken out and the joint session of Congress before this thing can turn nuclear? I'm just so furious over it.
Back in Washington, the mall looked empty except for accidental tourists, a stranded Australian.
This is just a terrible thing, and clearly it's a threat to all of us, to our safety, and it's a threat to democracy.
A woman from Topeka wondering how to get home.
Is there a train? I don't even know. We don't have trains in Kansas.
A student.
Just to see so many police officers everywhere. Everywhere you go, National Guards out on some of the streets. It's eerie.
Lots of flags, all at half-staff. Walmart sold 88,000 this day, 6,000 on the same day last year. At the Capitol's railroad station, a sign people could sign, and did. And a street musician playing a bugle call he probably hadn't played in years. Sadness and tiredness, back to work, still grieving, but determined. Bruce Morton, CNN, Washington.
With its world-famous landmarks and premier shopping streets, Manhattan normally packed with New Yorkers and tourists alike this time of year, and now there is just a gaping, dust-filled space in lower Manhattan. The streets somewhat deserted. Maria Hinojosa reports.
Midtown Manhattan, the heart of New York City. Usually a buzz, today quiet. An awful quiet.
This is what downtown looks like where I come from.
A quiet that stretched all the way from the foot of Manhattan through what should be bustling streets.
Normally you just pass and go about your daily work, but now you stop to say hello, how are you?
A quiet at the Port Authority where hundreds of commuters should be gathering. Quiet too at Penn Station where a flood of travelers is supposed to emerge, today a trickle.
Usually it's elbow to elbow, trying to run and get the train and just get to your job.
And outside on the street, the Madison Square Garden marquee, black.
This is the M104 to the United Nations.
It's hard to believe that in the middle of a Wednesday morning, in the middle of 6th Avenue, in the heart of Greenwich Village in Manhattan, that there's no traffic, nothing behind me, nothing coming from in front of me, standing in the middle of 6th Avenue. It's the eeriest of feelings.
People jousting around, running around, bumping into people, not caring about anything, because we're in such a great free society. And now we have to be careful of what we may do. People look at people apprehensively. So it's a different feeling altogether.
Businesses were closed except to help rescue workers. So were bridges and tunnels. Even the pet shop was closed.
Not up there. Not up there.
Usually trucks roll by at 5:30 in the morning in front of our home, and it wakes us up, and you kind of, and today there was nothing. It was so strange. I actually want the noise back.
Instead of work, the sign said that people should give blood or pray. And missing from the sky, that signature view of downtown Manhattan, the Twin Towers used to poke into the sky. Now there's just space. A lot of things missing in New York today. That New York attitude, gone for now. Maria Hinojosa, CNN, New York.
Well, in New York, it is now just a few minutes before 1 o'clock in the morning. It's a somber, a still shocked New York City, known as the city that never sleeps, but perhaps now as the city that just can't sleep after all that has happened there. Let's rejoin CNN's Garrick Utley. Garrick.
Jim, this evening again, we've seen once again here in Manhattan the way that people, not just in this city but across the country, indeed across the world, react when we have this kind of a tragedy. There are really sort of two sides to this. On the one hand, we come together in communities to offer emotional support, to offer our blood. And so many people downtown with special talents have offered to volunteer in the rescue effort. And yet at the same time, even in these groups, in these communities, we're very often individuals alone, if not lost with our own thoughts. And this evening here in Manhattan, Washington Square, Jody Ross attended and reports now on what happened there when many, many New Yorkers got together for a very special vigil there. Jody?
That's true, Garrick. It was a special vigil. It continues to go on. It's a somber scene here tonight. There's still many people around, many people still arriving, standing around, sitting around, lots of candles burning. Just a few hours ago, several hundred people gathered here, comforting each other, crying, hugging, showing their support for one another, and sharing their pain.
And I think it's better if we all get together.
It still doesn't seem real. It can't be. This doesn't happen in New York. This doesn't happen in the United States.
A lot of people shared that sentiment tonight. They were still in shock from what's happened. And a lot of people did want sort of a peaceful resolution to things. They're not looking for a violent retaliation. Singing seemed to be the thing that kept this group together. Songs like Amazing Grace and Blowin' in the Wind, We Shall Overcome, Give Peace a Chance. At one point, the collective group sang the national anthem and then cheered. They're standing strong, they're holding strong, helping each other here tonight. And for a moment tonight, actually even right now with all the candles burning, it almost drowns out, almost overpowers that smell of smoke that we can't seem to get away from tonight, sort of like an oasis, a little bit of relief in the midst of all the chaos and destruction. Garrick, back to you.
Thank you very much, Jody Ross at Washington Square in Manhattan, reminding us once again that there's no more deeply rooted human trait, perhaps, than coming together in moments of stress like this and not being trite or even cliched, except cliches have a certain amount of truth. It's been said in song, sung in song, and written in prose that people certainly need people and never more than at a time like this. Back to you, Jim.
All right. Gary Cutley there reporting from New York. Well, Colleen?
All right, Jim, that was the day after. It was a day when Americans clutched flags, reached for answers, and in the end found each other. And when they ran out of words, they turned to song, as members of the U.S. Congress did at this prayer vigil at the Capitol, which you're hearing now.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas